So, SEO tip number 1, mind your manners. You want to greet people with a handshake online. This means that what they search for should match what they find on your site. So often, people will type in a search query, and what they'll land on your home page, and it has nothing to do with the query. It has nothing to do with what they were searching for. That's just rude. Going back to the introduction of, hi, what do? You don't want to be rude here. You don't want to come back with, who are you again? Because that's essentially what you do when results are returned on a landing page or wherever the user lands after typing the search query, that they're not congruent with what they were looking for. So remember what we were talking about earlier, when the site fails, the reader bails. We want to make sure that we're keeping them engaged. So here's an example of exactly that. Someone types in that search query again of intellectual property lawyer, and one of the search results you get here, you land on this page, and apologies if we've got this law firm here, but the landing page here is talking about internet trademark infringement, and it goes into very detailed information about trademarks. So that's not necessarily what the search query was, and so it's not really paying off for the users. We want to try and avoid that. We want to make sure that folks are finding what they need, and your landing page strategy can help them to meet them with that open handshake. SEO tip number 2, your URL matters. It's your calling card. It should reflect the keywords or search terms most relevant to your business. You want to avoid those ugly URLs. Those are those long strings, those long URL queries that have a lot of punctuation, question marks, etc. in them. You can avoid using such URLs with aliasing, and that's not going to hurt you with the search engine. However, you want to make sure that when you think about your site structure and you think about your URLs, you should have a URL strategy that has one core URL and redirects all the others to it. You need to do this carefully so that you don't have duplicative URLs, and there's a way to balance that. But this is one of those things that makes sure that you are concentrating all of your SEO efforts in a single site. SEO tip number 3, be a good conversationalist. You don't want to offer monosyllabic responses. You need to say something. Each page ought to have at least 2 to 3 blocks of keyword-rich text. However, as we were talking about earlier, you want to balance the use of images with relevant text on your landing pages so that both bots and users get what you need. Berkey talked earlier today about the dinner plate and having a balanced serving of text, images, graphs, photographs, maps, and you want to make sure that that content is balanced because you need to be able to please both the users and the bots. SEO tip number 4, build it right the first time. There is a long list of technical best practices for SEO, and that's a part of a much more conversation between yourself and your webmaster and your IT folks. But to summarize, there are some coding staples such as frames, tables, and DHTML that can often cause bots to choke. In general, cleaner code is better. You want to create clean, valid code, and that means using development techniques a little bit more judiciously. A lot of the common development techniques using frames are inline frames, tables, DHTML, rollover menus, those types of things. They have a place, but you have to use them carefully. And when you do use them, you need to make sure that you have created a consistent set of tags and content that is more friendly for a search engine robot to find the information that's hidden in that type of construct. You want to limit your HTML file size. Keeping a lid on the number and size of the images and any unnecessary code is a good idea. It helps to make sure that the bots can find the information they need right away. Again, we need to strike that balance between the bots and the users and pleasing them both. So the site that just pleases the bots is not going to please the user, and vice versa. Another easy tip here is to put keywords at the top of each page's code. This is easy to do within your style sheets and to make sure that you've got tags there because, as we talked about earlier, search engines are all about hierarchy. The most important content should be at the top of the page so that the bots read that first. SEO tip number 5, calling on Heloise. Those of you who might know her, she was right. You need to label everything. Tags are labels that search engine bots crawl to understand the information on a page and the hierarchy of that information. You can use tags to your advantage. Here's an example of a site we recently did for one of our clients, Gesmer, and you can see here just an example. That's the page, and we have a call out there of the code. You don't need to understand the code. The only thing that you need to understand here is that you see if you scroll about halfway down in that box, you've got an H2, an open caret H2 and closed caret. It says the firm and H3. Those are just header tags, and that's a way of making sure that the bots realize, oh, this page is about the firm. It's an overview of the firm's information. They can scan that really easily. It's just an example of a way of using tags to your advantage and making sure that, again, it's very easily read. You want to use descriptive alt tags and images as well. Search engine tip number 6. One of the keys to success in search SEO is to learn how to talk so that the bots can hear you. It's important to know at the outset that bots are not users and users are not bots, and you need to be able to please both to have a successful site. And you're hearing that as a mantra from us because it's really important, and so many sites succeed on only one aspect or the other, and very few balance both well. Search engines use the content contained in the coding and in the tags to deliver rankings, but users use the amalgamation of the content, the mixture of the text, the fonts, the images, and that's how they process the information and can hear your story best. So your site needs to work for both of them in order to be successful, and our goal in working with our clients is to help them strike that right balance. You want a well-balanced dinner plate of the text, images, etc., and all of those things that are needed to really engage the users. And in addition to those pictures and graphs, you need to include the text and the tags for the bots. So it is possible to strike that balance, but you need to plan for it from the beginning. Finally, our last tip, SEO tip number 7, no bait and switch. And this is important and is worth a moment to pause upon. You need to be careful with SEO. There are a lot of companies that specialize in search engine optimization, and they'll focus on it. However, you need to be clear and make sure that they understand what's considered white hat and black hat, what's considered good and bad in search engine optimization best practices. You need to avoid things like hidden text and any other potentially deceptive practices. Any of them will get you blacklisted or could get you blacklisted and penalized, and you just won't show up in the search engine results at all. And the search engines are pretty ruthless about this. And you may not get caught today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday. And it's important to keep that in mind when trying to optimize for search. There is a right way to do it, and there is a wrong way to do it. And you want to tread carefully here. That actually concludes this section of the presentation for today. We wanted to make sure after last week that we allotted enough time for questions. And I think we have several here from the audience, so we'll go ahead and take them.